Good afternoon and welcome back to another Striper Migration Report from On the Water. It's the week of July 4th and we have just one more roundtable discussion next week to kind of wrap up the spring migration, which is slowly coming to a halt as hot summer weather kind of takes hold in the Northeast. So rather than do a whole state-by-state rundown, let's get a quick overview of the kind of minor fish movements that happened over the past week. The southern range of striped bass from Chesapeake Bay to Long Island has seen summer patterns forming for a few weeks now. However, last week, we received word that there was a slow trickle of bass dropping out of New York Harbor into the ocean. Anglers in Raritan Bay in the New York Bight region enjoyed a couple days of decent action out front on metal lips and live bunker, while up in Long Island Sound, there are still plenty of big bass around, pretty much from the entire west end all the way out to the east end and the rips of eastern Long Island Sound. It looks like they'll probably stick around for the summer at this point on that deep reef structure and in the nearby areas like the mouth of the Sound, think the Race, Sluiceway, Plum Gut, that area. Now, that said, another push of migratory fish moved into the Rhode Island area last week on the heels of the new moon, according to Captain Connor McLeod of Tall Tales Charters and Captain Rob Taylor of Newport Sport Fishing Charters. Right now, you've got big fish hanging deep along the reefs and ledges off South County, and of course, Block Island is hosting some great action for trophy-sized bass. Marching up the coast a bit to another historically popular summer striper destination, the Elizabeth Islands have left much to be desired lately from both surfcasters and boat anglers. There were schools of 40-inch bass moving up through the islands in waves earlier this month, but we never really saw them settle in among the holes and nearshore rock structure, which is typical of this time of year. They should be there. But boat anglers and surfcasters, as I said, have had a tough go in recent weeks in terms of the size department. The guys are picking small fish on eels and soft plastics out there, but it is nothing. It's a shadow of what it should be. We'll put it that way. However, east of the islands where Nantucket Sound meets the Atlantic, there continues to be steady action from stripers ranging from school size up to around 45 inches in the rips off Monomoy Island. But as temperatures continue to climb, even that is starting to wind down just a little bit. There's still plenty of fish out there, but they're slowly moving out of the rips, and as a result, the outer beaches of Cape Cod have seen intermittent waves, of bass moving slightly north, but they're not going far. Anglers in Cape Cod Bay and Boston Harbor should be on the lookout for a trickle of fresh fish as we approach the 4th of July holiday. There have been scattered schools of bunker up in the Boston area, although finding a pod with active fish on it requires some bouncing around. The stripers on those bunker pods have been of mixed sizes, while further offshore, Captain Brian Coombs of Get Tight Sport Fishing has been on trophy-class stripers that are hanging deep near the edge of state waters, so right around that 3-mile line. Just up the coast along the north shore of Massachusetts, mackerel, bunker, and even some squid are still fueling the bite, with stripers measuring into the upper 40-inch class. Meanwhile, off the coasts of New Hampshire and Maine, inshore mackerel numbers have increased, which Captain Lou Tirado of Diamond Pass Outfitters forecasted during last week's report. So great to see some macs showing up closer to home, especially since bunker have been a bit tougher to come by up that way. As those mackerel continue to move in from points offshore, anglers are hopeful that the bass will follow because there have been large schools of stripers spotted approximately 15 miles offshore and heading north. Of course, those fish need to be within 3 miles from shore in order to be fair game. Perhaps all these offshore schools are contributing to the rather slow fishing in central and northern Maine thus far. Fingers crossed for our maniacs that those fish come in closer to shore over the next couple of weeks. On the Water Striper Migration Reports are brought to you by Grundens. The Grundens brand was born almost 100 years ago in the small fishing village of Grundens, Sweden, when Carl A. Grunden began making waterproof oilskins to protect fishermen from the harsh conditions of the North Sea. Today, Grundens continues to bring that same level of quality and care to their extensive line of technical apparel for commercial and recreational fishermen. I've been fishing in Grundens Bedrock wading boots and Vector zip stocking foot waders, as well as the Portal Gore-Tex wading jacket. I actually had it on in the rain last night. Water beads up, rolls right off the jacket. It's great. It's kept me safe, it's kept me dry, kept me comfortable, no matter the conditions. I'm really looking forward to breaking them in as the striper season gets underway. The Gore-Tex Portal wading jacket is packed with waterproof features like neoprene sleeve cuffs, a drop hood with a high collar that shields me from harsh winds and pelting rain, and it is specifically designed to perform in cold weather and deep wading situations, so I can keep casting the stripers through the elements from early spring through late fall. There's truly no better fit for a Northeast surfcaster. Check out all their wading gear and more at Grundens.com. Grundens, we are fishing. That's our coastal rundown for the week, so let's kick it over to our guest reporter, Captain Joe Gugino of Fish Boston.
Hello, this is Captain Joe Gugino from Fish Boston, here in Winthrop, Massachusetts, fishing out of Boston Harbor. Over the last couple weeks, we've seen a lot of big fish move in offshore, but like it's been all season, it's been a little inconsistent. Some days we've seen big fish, some days we've seen no fish, some days a ton of bait, some days no bait. The average class of stripers we're seeing right now are around mid 30 inches on average. A couple huge fish, again, more out in the deep water. Very few small fish, I think, have caught less than a handful that are below 28 inches all year. What bait fish are around right now is we're seeing bunker, but what's interesting this year is we're seeing a lot of bunker that are more half the size of a typical size. In the past, we've only seen peanut bunker, huge bunker, and this year it's that middle class, which is great because the bait's around, but really hard to snag or get bait to catch fish, and especially difficult when there's mackerel's hard to get. Other than that, we've seen some smaller herring, some smaller bait fish around in some of the bays that have been fun. For those smaller baits, we've been catching them on flies, chartreuse, white, and olive, catching them on small paddle tails like algags and hoagie. And obviously, we catch them on the dock consistently in the rock piles and out in deep water. Over the next 2 weeks, will be interesting to see what the hot weather looks like. We had that heat wave last week that definitely affected the fish, and looking forward to seeing a consistent pattern emerge here this summer.
On the Water Striper migration reports are also brought to you by Quantum. Stripers are back, and so is Quantum with their new Benchmark and Strive spinning reels. I had a chance to fish the surf with the Benchmark 6000 during the fall striper migration last year, and it is a true workhorse. Performs great in all kinds of surf, but especially in that heavy, rough surf that you get during the fall run and even during the early spring when all those storm systems are moving through. The 6000 size Quantum Benchmark boasts 35 pounds of fish-stopping drag power, and like all Benchmark models, it is highly resistant to heavy water pressure and sand or salt intrusion, which makes it a great choice for fishing big surf. The Strive 3000 spinning combo, which includes the same water-resistant qualities, was a top performer from the kayak and boat when stripers and bluefish fed alongside schools of large bonito last fall. The fully sealed Strive spinning reel is complemented by a sensitive but durable graphite composite rod with a stainless steel guide train, so I can focus on fighting fish with confidence instead of worrying about chipped, scratched, or corroded guides. To learn more about how Quantum is setting the new standard in saltwater fishing, check out quantumfishing.com. Quantum, tested beyond limits. Thanks for chiming in, Joe. We appreciate your insight regarding the early summer bass bite in Boston Harbor up to the North Shore of Massachusetts. Now, let's kick it over to Canyon Runner for a quick summary of what happened after last week's new moon. Canyon Runner is doing a 1-month free trial for their Inshore mapping system. If you want to take advantage of this exciting offer, email info@canyonrunner.com for more details. The Canyon Runner virtual captain and tracking map is coming soon to inshore anglers chasing stripers and all other inshore species for as low as $99 a year. It serves as your co-captain, providing weather, water temperature, and safety information with a built-in warning system and so much more. Gain the ability to track each and every member and pro staff boat in real time on one page, one map, one website, one helm. Know where the fleet is at all times and extend your network of buddy boats in real time. Learn more at www.canyonrunner.com. Take it away, guys.
All right, Matt. How about that? How can you believe 3.5 months have gone that quickly? It's almost scary. It's the end of June. 3.5 months takes us to the bitter end of the basically entire season for New England and Mid-Atlantic from today. But 3.5 months means it's over for the Striper Report. And I've got the water temperature charts on here. What a completely different looking chart versus 3.5 months ago. We now have like mid to high 70s off of South Jersey. We're not even going to talk about bass all the way up this way. There's nothing going on except for a couple people up in the rivers at night with eels. As we look to the east, and that's what we're going to look at. Look at the water temperatures. Montauk, it's already about to go over that 65 degree. It's 66 up here, south of Newport. As you go around, look at the bay. Look at Cape Cod Bay, 65. Look all the way up the line. You're getting almost you're up in Maine here and you're 65. It's just about over, folks. That's why we're going to wrap this up with a little summary of what went on this season. And starts back here. Remember, 3.5 months ago, we were down here. We were talking Chesapeake Bay fish up inside the creeks. We were talking Mod Squad Charter, Sid up in here, way up inside the rivers he had to fish. Up on the flats inside here where the water would just warm up. We were looking for 55 degree water. And as the season progressed, the stripers migrated up the coast. We saw everything up in Barnegat Bay and Tom's River, everything up in the Mullica Rivers. And then finally, probably the next big thing was here, Raritan River. Folks had to go all the way west of the Parkway. Some folks were west of the Turnpike out here to see the first fish. Stuff poured out into Raritan Bay, Jamaica Bay, which warmed up quicker than most because it's shallower. We had our folks on fatback fishing in here a lot. And then as the season progressed, we worked to the east. So as the season progressed, we're working east. And what happened? We saw some fish, again, up inside the rivers and the estuaries and the cuts in here where it warmed up first. That's where the fish were. But then what happened is we had the fishing just go off. It went off at Montauk. And we're going to get over to that in a second. It went off in Montauk, and it got very, very good off this point. And that was one of the big things of the season, just how great the fishing was. And it still is at Montauk. But what really was the downside of the season was just the ocean fishing. There was really limited ocean fishing the whole stretch. I mean, you used to have years where from Sandy Hook on down to Barnegat, like this whole stretch would be the best fishing of the year. It was basically the worst. There was very little fish here. There wasn't a ton of bunker. Not in all. There wasn't enough bunker maybe to hold a bass. Who knows? We know where the bass went. They went out here. They went out around Block. They filled up in here around Newport. We had our folks at Rigid Fishing all along this stretch constantly. Oh, brother. Ton of trips, fishing every day basically since we started. Really towards the end of April. Oh, brother's been fishing every day here. Rigid Fishing, doing some commercial fishing now. Again, night fishing around Block, but it's all starting to slow up. What's happening? The fish have migrated up this way. They're in Cape Cod Bay. You'll see it as we slide this way. You'll see the boats fishing up in here, working around here. These are folks all giant tuna fishing today. This is only the last 3 days. So you're not going to see the track lines. It just got too crowded when we first started doing this 3 months ago. There's no one out here. If I did a track line for a whole week, we would fill up the whole map. So here's Four Seas has been doing a lot of bass fishing up here, back up in the river in the mouth. There's still fish up in here, and they go all the way up into Maine now. And basically it will be a slow pick for the rest of the season. And what I just went through and the way that water temperature warmed up and where it is now, we're not going to do these reports in the fall, but it is literally like the exact same pattern in reverse. You'll start to fish will move down here, and then we'll see fish. And this hopefully the folks that didn't have this year will have it in the fall. We usually see great fishing along the coast as the water basically cools down. Let's look at our weather for this week. It's a big week, 4th of July week. What do we do always? We're going to zoom out. We're going to look. We're going to look for big highs. We're going to look at what we think, some bad weather middle of the week, but we think we've got a real tranquil pattern. This is a lot of high pressure. Hopefully a real look at all this blue. Like I haven't seen that much blue. We haven't seen that much blue doing this for a while. That's Saturday. And it might just run right through the weekend. Fingers crossed. We have a good weekend coming up. So long story short of it, that summary is basically what we've got for fishing. We won't have much fishing except for up in here. We have boats right now fishing for bass right up in here. We still have bass up in the bay. We have bass off of Plymouth. We have bass off of Boston and then up the way to Maine. And that's really where the biggest concentration is going to be for most boats. Rigid Fishing. Today happened to be his first trip where he started looking offshore for tuna. Basically the sign that, it's June 30th. The bass fishing is over here. Oh, brother, we'll continue doing some bottom trips. If I hide the members and just show you where he's been fishing now, he's been out here, fluke fishing, bottom fishing. He's not looking for the bass up in here that much anymore. That's almost over. So the long and short of it is, the timing's right. The season's winding down. We'll be talking tuna with you folks right through the middle to the end of October. We're really looking forward to that, and we really enjoyed this. I hope you did too. Matt, back to you. Thanks, everybody. This was great.
On the Water's Striper Migration Reports are also brought to you by Garmin Marine. Whether you're setting up to hold position on a rip line or inching your way toward a boulder-strewn beach, Garmin's force crack and trolling motor is up to the task in any saltwater environment. With autopilot features like anchor lock, cruise control, and route following, which can all be controlled via wireless remote, this bow-mounted trolling motor is built to help you make the most of your inshore fishing trips, regardless of the conditions. The Force Kraken trolling motor is available in a range of shaft lengths from 48 to 90 inches for bay boats, center consoles, down east style hulls, and more. Learn more about the Force Kraken trolling motor and everything Garmin Marine has to offer at www.garmin.com. Garmin, engineered on the inside for life on the outside. We touched on a few minor fish movements with the passing of the June new moon, and now stripers are really starting to settle into their summer patterns, even in parts of southern New England. To keep a bent rod these next couple of months, pay even greater attention to water temperature and how it is impacted by the tides, and focus your efforts on areas with stable food sources. By mid-July, the diets of many large striped bass will change from mackerel, bunker, and schooling fish to larger individual meals in the form of sea bass, tautog, fluke, lobsters, bergals, and more. Boulder fields, inshore reefs and ledges, deep inlets, and their adjacent beaches are all likely to hold stripers that will be feeding during selective stages of the tides throughout the summer months. Deciphering when that feeding window occurs is half the battle. The next is presenting those bass a big bait that they simply can't pass up. Keep the small stuff packed away until the late summer or early fall, when those young of the year bait fish like peanut bunker, bay anchovies, mullet, and more are back on the menu for southbound stripers. As I mentioned previously, we'll have one more roundtable discussion next week to wrap up our 2025 striper migration reports. I want to thank everybody who has tuned in to watch or listen at some point over the last 14 weeks. We appreciate you all, and we hope our reports have helped you catch a couple extra fish this season. Also, huge thank you to our sponsors, Grundens, Quantum, Canyon Runner, and Garmin, who made these reports possible week in and week out. And final reminder for you, signups for On the Water Striper Cup will remain open until mid-September, and you can win prizes each week for catching stripers and submitting those photos and measurements online. Learn more, sign up, and check out all the rules at stripercup.com. And remember, when taking those submission photos, please minimize the time your fish is out of the water. Keep them wet as long as possible, and take your time reviving and releasing them with these warm summer water temperatures. Best of luck this summer. Stay bent, folks.